Welcome in everybody to the Astrology 101 webinar that you've all been waiting for your entire lives, I'm sure. But really, today we're going to be getting through all of the astrology, breaking down everything that we possibly can. This is the everything that you need to know rendition of this reading. For anyone who is entering or watching this later on with the recording, thank you so much for popping up to this and allowing the space for me to sit here and explain this all to you in this process. So let's make sure I do this. I'm going to pin myself to the top here because why not? Anyway, let's start to hit this into this, right? So let me open up this one app, and I sent all the PowerPoints again, but I want to open it up on my side as well. And that's going to be just an easy way for me to start to present this. Again, notes are ready. I have a lot to still say, but I want to at least show you in this process. Does everybody still see, hear, everything else like that? Just a head nod or something? Just want to make sure. Perfect. Okay. So right now we're going through the Astrology 101, and there's me to the side with a bunch of planets. Like, yeah, that's me. Okay, cool. So the idea behind this concept, and I was looking through all of your results in terms of what you're looking for. A lot of y'all wanted to study the basis. A lot of y'all wanted to know how transits impact you. A lot of y'all want to know how these planets communicate. What I'm going to do today is to make sure you have the core knowledge on how to look at these things even when they come up. Because it's one thing if you're having something transiting your Mars, it's another thing when you don't know what Mars means to you. And that's what we're really going to get into today. So again, I'm being a less of a goofball bag and a little bit more of my serious Capricorn self, but let's start to break some things down. So I have this thing. This looks convoluted. I want to show you the more quote unquote complicated things just to introduce this to you, and then we're going to go through things one by one, right? So the first part to this entire thing that I have to point out, and this is one of the easiest ways for you to start to understand the astrology of it all, right, is that the elements in astrology are king or queen or goddess or god, whatever you want to put. The idea and principle part of astrology truly, and very similar to older traditions as well throughout the ages. As a matter of fact, most traditions that ended up picking up astrology in their ancient times all had direct communications, lines, or relationships to nature, to the natural world. We live in a very 4D, 5D kind of world. We have AI. We have this thing that literally shouldn't exist as far as technology is concerned. This is the little witch's box, if all things are considered, right? So to think that we've gone so far, and even as a society, even as a collective, mastering and tapping into the elements of nature this well goes to show how these energetics start to move forward. And even in alchemy, even in like anything that has to do with manifestation, the most important parts of those things typically are what elements are you invoking on. So with that being said, what astrology is really about is figuring out what elements already exist within you. And here's the kicker. If you have strong predominance in any element when you look at your chart, just know that that's what you emphasize on. And if there's something that you don't have in your chart in terms of an energetic, so let's say you look at your chart and you look at the side and it all says, oh, I have all these earth signs here, right? Meanwhile, you look over there, you're like, whoa, I don't have any air. That means that it might be harder for you to do air sign things. However, that also means that in general, you're going to attract people who might have that air sign energy. Have any of y'all ever had that friend that just was able to kind of like counterbalance all of your energy? Like maybe you were too talkative and they were just quiet enough but knew how to chirp in and you knew how to pull back then. This is kind of the way that astrology is set up. This is all the different elements of how this connects. So I'm going to just go through the science as we know them, and I'm just going to briefly explain this. So if you're new, if you're super new, I know this is hard to take apart. We like to talk about the science and we'll be like, oh, this person was a Sagittarius. He thought he knew everything. Of course he did. That's why he's doing an astrology 101. No, but truly, the idea behind the concept of the sun sign, I need y'all to erase that for this class. If I say like Virgo, and you're like, I don't like Virgo, I need you to erase that just for this class. If you could take that and leave that behind for just a minute, I promise you it's going to pay off by the end of this 100%. So let's ease into this. Each and every zodiac sign that I'm about to mention to you, I'm highlighting it right now. Do not think of them as if it is one person. Do not think of it as if it is only like one scenario or one circumstance or something that's not, how am I put this? Don't think of it as if it's just one way or there's only one rendition of how to dig into this. What it really is and what's really going on is that these are energetics. These are energetic frequencies, and depending on what planet is there depends on how that energetic frequency acts out. We're going to get to the planets later, but I'm just letting you know, when I tell you the signs as a whole, these are energetics. These are energetic frequencies, and there's only 4 categories. Just want to start you there. So think 4 categories, 4 elements, 4 directions. Think about how many times we have 4 in the grand scheme of things, right? The way I want to put to this fire rendition of this is that if you have fire, this Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, right? So mind you, if you look at your chart, I sent you the astral charts thing. Actually, here's what I'm gonna do in a second. Someone else was trying to get into this meeting and they were locked out, so I want to make sure I swing that over to them real quick. But I'm about to start actually screen sharing to show you exactly what's going on. So let's do this. So I'm gonna sorry, and let me know if y'all have any questions in the process too, because I'm just yapping. So let me stop presenting this one, and we're going to hop over to my fancy app, wherever that went. Let's make another one just in case. Present now, and we're going over to here. Perfect. So this right here that I'm showing y'all right now, this is a beautifully done chart. I downloaded this app called Luna. Y'all don't need this, and I'm using the clear version because most people use those kind. I usually use the dark out version, but you know, for teaching capacity, I'll go to this one. If anyone prefers the other one, just please let me know. But the idea here, when we talk about Aries, Leo, and Sag, let's start off with this energetic, just to give you a concept of how this works. And I know some of y'all are asking about degrees. I have y'all covered too, no worries. But as of today, as of right now, as of this moment, as of what's going on, we have the sun in Leo. So everybody knows at least one Leo somewhere, right? As a matter of fact, Leo is ruled by the sun. We're going to get into rulerships later when we talk about the planets. But do you see how many layers are starting to be revealed as I'm looking at this one thing? This is the entire chart, right? But I want to make sure that we're looking at one piece at a time and learning how to navigate from there, okay? So this, again, is at that 5-degree point. Now, what's going on with the sun? What's going on with this? Well, Leo season just started, and as everyone I've pretty much talked to in the last 30 days or so, a lot of people were having a lot of tough and difficult and heavy emotions that they were maneuvering through and trying to figure out, and like, oh, I'm feeling all these things here, or, oh, I'm feeling this going on here. What's going on in my life? What's going on in my world? Well, the sun was in water. The sun was in Cancer. Remember what we were saying before in terms of that? This is our energetics. Now, the sun shows us how that is on a grand scale. And that's what everyone feels in those 30-day time frames. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I at least wanted to point out, like, this is all the stuff we're going through bit by bit. And again, y'all have the recording as well. And you have me as a resource. Ask any questions you need as I go throughout this, right? So let's hop on over one more time to the tome thing that I had up just to give you concept of each of these signs, and then we'll hop a little. Perfect. So the next portion to this that I'm going to be breaking down, let's hop back on to this. Looks good. Boom. So when we look at what's right here, the fire signs, as far as the energetic is concerned, is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And this energetic is passionate energetic, I don't want to say it twice. And also enthusiastic. When it comes to the element of fire, fire is the thing that starts things going. Fire is the morale of people keep pushing forward. Fire is the passion that you have when you with somebody that you love. That's the idea of the fire signs. Now, do not confuse fire with anger. That is incorrect. It took me a really long time to dismiss that idea, but fire signs and that fire energetic isn't typically angry. They're not actually really upset. However, they have a very strong relationship to individualism. They get their power and gain their power and prowess from their individual nature. Who am I as a person? Boom. That's one of the main tropes of fire, right? And with that being said, fire lights up the room. Fire brings that sense of passion to things that might be passionless or might not be fully accepting and embracing the totality of what they're doing and how they're going forward. So what's the next portion to this? Well, let's hop into the earth signs, right? Now, the earth signs really are what holds together the rest of the zodiac, if we're going to be very honest. Actually, as a matter of fact, they hold down all of us all the time because without that specific power and without that that earth element, we would be doing so many reckless things all of the time. Why is earth important? Because it at least gives us the capacity to know how to chill. It tells us when we need to act, when we don't need to act. And think about even in terms of investment. Sometimes if you invest money into something, you do not see that turnaround immediately, right? And now my air signs and fire signs, we probably a little confused right now. Would you save? What? Meanwhile, there's that Taurus friend that you have who's been saving a little bit, or that earth sign friend you have. Let's get to the energetic again. There's that earth sign friend that you have that has been saving little bits of money, or has been investing into this company here, investing into this thing here over the course of time. And then when everyone else is broken, what's going on? You turn around to your earth friend, they're like, oh, I've been good. I've been saving. I've been making sure to do this. I've been making sure to make all the paperwork right. Earth signs are practical, grounded, and reliable people. Now, when I do say any of these terms and you're like, oh, I'm an earth sign, but I don't feel this way, this is why we're going through the entire chart. This is why I'm going to be teaching y'all each of the planets in this process. I'm going to keep going through the air signs a little bit more. Do not leave the archetypes alone. Don't pay attention to the archetypes right now. Just this. So the earth sign energy is doing that. So let's get into the air signs for just a second too. Now, air is one of the most, obviously all of these are the 4 pillars of importance, but air is an important sign because first of all, it's hot as I don't know what in this room. I have a little fan on right now, which is probably going to be the only thing keeping me going alive for the next 2 hours and some change. But the idea in terms of air is that air is all about not even just communication, but it's what gives us relationship to one another. Right. If you ever walk by someone, and this is a little meta, but you ever walk by somebody and you just got a whiff of their air or their aura. And this could be a good thing or a bad thing. Because I know that we've walked by somebody before and we get a whiff of their air or their aura. And we're like, ooh, brother, ooh, I don't like their aura. You know what I'm saying? I can't speak to everybody, but I've definitely had at least my times where I've walked by somebody, perhaps most particularly some type of lovely lady, and I walk on by and I'm like, oh my God, wow, that whiff of everything. What's going on over there? The reason why I'm mentioning at least that capacity is because it's that's kind of just going to show where it's we have a sense of that air type feeling. Now, granted, this is also one of those things where sometimes you're drawn to talk to a stranger. Sometimes you're drawn to have a conversation. As a matter of fact, more than half of y'all ended up having some air sign thing because I've had real life conversations with at least most of y'all in here at least once. So with that being said too, that communication, that camaraderie, we still came across one another through that air element, despite if we have met each other in person or not, right? So the air element, again, this is Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, intellectual, social, communicative, but not just that. It's really the gel between all of those things, right? As a matter of fact, it is the air coming from my mouth that's reaching this element that's making y'all hear this in the first place. So think about air as like this is the in-between of all the stuff, and it's your speaker, which is using that same air to pop that out so you can hear me as well. So just to give you a little context, we're going to get deeper into that later, but I at least wanted to introduce. I wanted to start this off slow before I start popping off. That's such a good way to think about that. Thank you. But that is really like one of those situations. That's the reason why air sign or air heavy people, they're able to like, in a weird way, catch the whiffs and auras of so many other people at a time. And they're just trying to see like, where do they fit in? And so that's why a lot of times there is that like social element. There is that social nature. You know, that one person at the party or at the function who's talking to every single person. It's like, how do you know everybody? They're using their air element. They're just trying to pick up on some conversation. They're trying to get the other conversion on both sides. They're more telepathic. I don't want to say air signs are more telepathic as much as they know how to navigate socially. They do have telepathy as well, but I want to say telepathy is more of water. And let me actually introduce the water signs right now. It's coming from a water sign right now, actually, who asked this to begin with. But the water signs. Now, water, I'm going to be so transparent. Water is the most complex of the signs, in my personal opinion. I don't have a lot of water in my chart, but water has to deal with so many tumultuous parts to their nature. Why is that though? Well, the one thing with water sign energy people is that they kind of navigate life from a soul first perspective. And with that being said, they typically lead through life with their emotions. Now, what's one thing about emotions that like we can all kind of understand? Well, the one thing about emotions is that they are fleeting. Sometimes you might be like in the best of moods. Sometimes you're not in a good mood. That mood over time changes and shifts. And now here's my question to you. Have you ever been in one of the biggest stinks in your life? And then next thing you know, someone you love just texts you and you're like, oh okay, it's going to be fine. That change, that ability to change, that ability to like get that feedback and then like mold yourself into the next thing. That's the power of water. When it comes to even the science of water, water can fit into any container that it ends up going through. However, water could also be a river. Also, water could be a waterfall. Also, water could be a freaking tsunami and take out everybody with it if the emotions are set for it. So you got to understand, as a water element, on the core end of that, it is about healing. On the core end of that, it is about pulling out those other portions. But I did want to at least, I know y'all laughing. It's weird because I can't see y'all faces laughing, but that's okay. I didn't tell everybody to put their screens on. And plus, I know for me, I be dusty in random like meets and stuff like this if I ain't expect to show my face. So I don't expect nobody else. Not to say that y'all are, but trust me when I say I get it. No worries in the slightest. What I am saying, if y'all do want to show your lovely faces, though, I'll say hi. You know, hey, what's good? Hey, what's up? See, hey, we got some people here. Okay. Anyway, so, I would love to talk to the void for 2 hours, but at that point, I would have stayed home. Anyway, let's hop on into the next part. Genuinely, so I talked a little bit about the signs and the elements. So here's my question to y'all, because I know that. My question that I have is that would y'all rather deep dive deeper into the signs first, or would y'all want to get into the planets first? I really want to like get that feedback in here because I want to make sure that I'm addressing what people know or what they're looking to know, because I'm a deep dive on the signs and such. But if y'all want to know about the planets first, planets, got 2 for planets. Anybody else on planets? Okay. We got 4 for planets. Let's get it. All right, okay. All right, y'all yelling, okay. I got y'all. So, all right, let's hop in. So let's start off with this, right? I didn't write a lot for this part, but I do have notes on it over here because, like, I was busy. I ain't gonna lie. So to break this down, though, and this is where I'm gonna start going back and forth between right here and also to the actual chart you have up. Sidebar, if anybody wants to see like one of their famous celebrities charts and stuff like that, I will definitely pull somebody's up. So drop down one of your favorite celebrities. Who do you want to see pop up with that? If I could easily look it up, drop it over in the comments. I'm gonna pick 1 or 2 of them just to use as an example after I break these down, just so we can have a back and forth between that, right? So let's talk about the sun. right? Again, the sun sounds kind of boring. We all know our sun sign, but do we? But do we really? Because the sun sign, genuinely speaking, is the ego. And we get really caught up in the term ego a lot. We're like, oh, ego. If you have an ego, that means you have to be arrogant. If you have an ego, that means you have to be so sure of yourself. If you have an ego, that's the reason why your body knows that you need to eat so you can survive, right? The way that the sun sign works in terms of like the ego is that it's not like it's an egotistical thing, which is something that we get confused often. What does the sun represent? Let's do this cookie cutter definition I made, and then we'll get into the next, right? Talk about the sun. We have a Leo pop in. Look at that. See how it works? Anyway, and we'll get into that too. The sun sign. The sun represents the core identity and self-expression. It reveals your ego, individuality, and the essence of who you are. It represents your conscious self and how you shine your light in the world. When it says shine your light into the world, right? Main thing that I want to point out specifically is that you don't have a choice about how you shine. That's my first point. This is the part where you don't have a choice about it, right? As many times in my world as I've shied away from teaching, which has been a lot, I'm not gonna lie. Like literally when I was a kid, they were like, you need to be a teacher, you need to be a doctor, you need to whatever. And I was like, I'm good. Now here I am, like teaching. I help people. I coach people. I got a few people that I coach that are also in here. Much love to you. I appreciate you for pulling through. But it's like, this is one of those conversations or situations to where it's like, as a Sagittarius, at least, no matter how many times I've tried to shy away from that teacher role or that teacher mark, that still comes up. You don't really have a choice about what goes on with your sun sign. It's your role that you have to play for everyone else, right? No matter how down bad most people are around me, if even at my worst, as that Sag sun, just using the sun sign example, will bring up morale. I will do something. I'll be silly. I'll juke around about something. Like no matter how serious it is, I will do that just to make sure that opens that up. So how does your sun sign navigate in that way? Can you relate to your sun sign in that capacity? Does it feel like you have anything that's like you have a say about it? Is it something that just happens? The side part to the sun, and the reason why the sun, you can have different. You could be, let's say you're Aries. I'm just using this as an example. Let's say you're Aries, right? You're going to meet different Aries. You can meet 10 Aries in a row and y'all are going to be different. There's going to be differences between that. You could be a couple of days difference. It could be whatever different. And it's like, whoa, why are we so different? Now, granted, you have 9 other planets in your chart doing this, but here's really where it's different. I might click the wrong thing. Oh, no, I didn't. I'm a genius. This right here. See how we have 3 different layers of Aries? We'll get there later, but I wanted to just introduce you this concept again. These are the differentials. This is why it's so important to look at these as energetics versus that person's an Aries. Like, no, their ego, their sun might be the Aries. And where their degree is at in that Aries is going to change the difference. I know a lot of y'all were asking about degrees. Again, we have a lot of time today introducing that. And please keep up with the notes as much as possible because I am going to be, again, breaking down much more. I'm slowly trying to start this off. Okay. So the sun, again, ego, light, how you do that. As a matter of fact, this is your externalization and how you push out into the world, right? This is the masculine, so to speak. And when I say masculine, I'm not just saying male, female, that's not the point. Masculine is the push. So no matter what you do, your sun sign will still push that bit of personality, that bit of that role into everything that you do. Right. That's why even if like I don't agree with every Sag, as a matter of fact, I know some Sag right now that I could easily call out and talk issue in real life, not outside of this. I would love to poke at them about it. But also I see where they're coming from. And I'm like, oh, they're still doing their thing, but in a different way than me. Now I might do it better, but that's my own prerogative. I'm talking shit. But genuinely speaking, it's like this is why we have differences in that sun sign capacity. So if there is somebody in your sign, you don't relate to them, we're going to get into why later on. But I just want to let you know we're just taking away the original expectation. We're just trying to take away that original part. So let's get into the next thing. I'm gonna do the moon, the rising, then I'm gonna hop into a chart just to show y'all how that works. So let's go to the moon, right? The moon. Let's read the definition first. The moon represents emotions and intuition. It reveals your emotional needs, instincts, and reactions. It represents your subconscious self and how you nurture and care for yourself and others. Now, if there's one, the most important word in that whole background, subconscious. The subconscious self, right? The moon is like how you dream. The moon is how you're intuiting different information. The moon is how you also feel comfortable when it comes to things. So one thing that happens sometimes with certain people is that their sun and moon might be at odds. Their sun and moon might not agree with one another. So sometimes if someone has a sun and moon that doesn't agree, your role might be saying, hey, here's what I am. But your feelings might be saying, but I'm actually like this. So this can sometimes create a dichotomy where people are like, you didn't say that before. Why are you feeling this way now? And it's like, I thought I did. These are sometimes where we get into certain confusions. And the reason why I also want to highlight why it's so important for everyone to also know their moon sign. And when you do need that moment of peace, when you need that moment to yourself, it is going to be that moon to help guide you through in terms of that, right? So what does the moon sign really do? The moon is your emotional body. Word. It is how you really tap into the divine of things. So let's say I'm going to use, again, an older example, and we'll get into a chart after. But let's say you have your moon in Aquarius, right? So how does that emotion happen? And this is how we're going to start to tie this all together. Someone has their moon in Aquarius. Okay. So their emotional body, their subconscious, and how that goes that they want to show love through their friendship. So what's going on with someone with a moon in Aquarius, no matter the other parts of that they value friendship, and that makes them emotionally comfortable. That makes them more intuitive. They might pick up their intuitions even while hanging out with friends. Is this starting to like slowly make sense? Okay, because like that's why I wanted to just like show y'all the back and forth of just this in between, and then we'll do the real example. And so no matter where your moon sign is at, that's going to be how you start to nurture yourself. So again, someone with moon in Aquarius, you might be feeling like the odd one out. That might be your solution to that might be to go out and hang out with your friends. The solution to that might be like go and enjoy yourself. Or the solution could be I need to be away from all of my friends right now. I need a moment of my own sanctity. But you see how in both of those cases, friendship was important. The network was important. Communication of that air was important. So the moon, no matter where it's at in that energetic, that's how that's going to work. Perfect. I'm glad that that's helped. So I totally did this wrong. Ignore all of this. This is incorrect. Rising sign, it is your aura. As a matter of fact, as I type it right now, as a matter of fact, it is the embodiment of you. How you look, how you radiate your energy, and how you self-identify with your soul. Okay, now that I fixed that. But really, the rising sign genuinely is like the aura that you have. And the reason why the rising sign is such a hard thing to pinpoint is because it's like, hey, the rising sign is what's the highest point on the eastern side of the horizon as it comes up in the morning. It's like, what are you saying? So basically, the easiest way to put this is that this was the highest part of all of the orbit where you were born underneath. It gets more complicated. It gets less complicated. I think I have a whole video explaining the totality on this. But the main thing I want to say, the reason why everyone's like, you need your birth time. You need your birth time. You need your birth time, because without your birth time, you don't know your rising sign. And the rising sign truly is the key to the rest of your birth chart. Without the rising sign, you don't know the houses, right? And the houses are one of those things that I know y'all are asking about the planets, but I know y'all want to know about the houses. That's the most complicated part. And I'm going to be breaking that down through the elements, through the planets, through everything else. So we're going to be ending off with the houses, but I have it down in a way that I think is going to finally make sense for real. So I wanted to just put that out there for y'all. Much love. Okay. Now, the thing about the rising sign, again, the rising sign is who we are, right? So, for example, when you become more of yourself, you're actually not becoming more of your sun sign. And I need to point this out. You become more of your rising sign. We are meant to rise into that energetic as we keep going on through our lives. It's not something that we immediately master. It's something that we are always configuring, the same way that we're always figuring out ourselves. If you're looking at your rising sign energetic, and if you want to just look at it from genuinely, if you're lost by anything, I need y'all to go back to this concept, because the elements are what's going to ground that in every time. So if you have a rising sign that is Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, your aura is going to be tied to the emotional world, the intuitive world, and you're going to have a sensitivity to you. Now, that's something to point out. And being sensitive isn't negative. That's the other side to this. There's no sign that's worse than the next sign. There's no energetic that's worse than the next energetic. But what I can say is some people got some stupid combinations that pop up in their chart, and it hurts us so. And that's where we learn how to navigate through those challenges by knowing ourselves, right? Because the challenges don't go away, but the informative part and the information of knowing how those things work is what changes everything. So I'm going to use, I just saw Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I'm going to use Martin, although I will say I do love me some Malcolm X in general, but I want to make sure that let's go to Martin Luther King, someone we all know, and we're going to start off with a brother. You know what I'm saying? Because you feel me? Anyway, so you have a question, Art? If anything, just either drop it then, hop in, say something, let me know. But I want to make sure that we hop on over to this page as well. I usually don't present with my Google Meets, but this is kind of fun. I've been enjoying navigating this. Okay, so this is Dr. Martin Luther King, as we can see. Now, what did we just talk about? We just talked about the sun, we just talked about the moon, and we talked about the rising. Ignore everything else. If you see AS, this also stands for ascendant, right? So if you see ascendant or someone says, what is your ascendant? They just are saying rising sign in pretentious, and that's okay. So in any case, we talked about the sun. So let's talk about this Capricorn. We're not even looking at the chart yet. Let's talk about this Capricorn, right? Oh, shoot. Earth. So his sun. What's his sun again? Oh, his role. He has no choice in the role that he has to perform. So what is that? Capricorn. Practical, grounded, and reliable. Okay. Good to know. So Martin Luther King, despite we don't know nothing about him right now, we just know that he is practical, grounded, and reliable. Good to know. Now, the next part, let's scroll down and just see. Let's get a little specific just so you can see something else. And I'm doing these reveals to you on purpose just to kind of show you where these things go. And if anyone does have any questions in between that, please stop me and let me know. I just want to make sure that y'all see what I'm trying to do. Okay. So let's use his same sun sign again. We're not looking at the chart again. Just to show you just the sun, moon, and rising. So Capricorn, what is this? This is representing power by being a figurehead, able to use themes to hold authority over others and have a strong resignation on having titles. I just called him Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, granted, I know who he is, and I hope if you're watching this, you know who he is. But at the same time, the idea, you know, I'm a goofball. Come on. Anyway, but just to fully put into perspective, what is the power of his sun sign, right? And this is where we get into the fun stuff. So you know how everyone was asking about degrees? This right here, and I have to give credit to my boy, the Peace Dealer. As a matter of fact, let me drop down his video because I watched this video that he did in 2017, and these are all the notes that I'm using have been notes from my personal life that I wrote on my path to being an astrologer. So this is like very akin to a concept that he brought up, and I want to at least share the link over with y'all as well to further your education after that. And I always got to big that up because without that support that he gave in my process, I probably wouldn't have fully done this at all. So wanted to at least give some love there and to point out when you see some of these things, I did get that from that full thing. So just to give you some context and give you some lore, you know, why not? But let's talk about again his sun sign. His sun sign is ruled by Mercury. We're not at all of the planets yet, but this is an important part. The master of control, great with words, analysis, right? This is his sun sign. When we get down to Martin Luther King, most people in the U.S., unless you live down south, respectfully, you know I have a dream, right? Like I have a dream, you know, right? Great with words, analyst. He was pointing out all of the discrepancies during the civil rights movement in terms of what was wrong, right? If Martin Luther King didn't want to do all that he did, he kind of didn't have a choice to, because his sun in Capricorn felt the responsibility to use his abilities to get that thing done, right? I just remembered that I'm highlighting it on the side, but you're not seeing the same thing. It's okay. But anyway, this is the 20 degrees. This is the later parts of that. Let's talk about his moon. So he has his moon over in Pisces, as we can see, right? And now we're going to get down to this chart. We have unlocked a new feature. So if you ever see this circle with this thing in the middle, that was his Capricorn, right? We're not getting into houses yet. Just know that he's a Capricorn. Moon right now, we have his moon in Pisces. What does it mean to have your moon in Pisces? Well, that means his moon, again, is in water. I'm using the same thing I sent you as far as the other part. So if you have the other slide up, I'm using this slide in the process. It's just going to be easier to explain this way. Pisces is using magic that's intangible, that they manifest through their imaginations. They know how to incorporate things that don't necessarily make sense to everyone else. How did that show up in Martin Luther King? Well, one of the most important parts to his legacy is that every time he led a protest, it was non-violent, which at the time was like, these people are literally out here trying to hurt you. Why don't you defend yourself? Now, if we talk about Brother Malcolm, as Art also mentioned, Brother Malcolm said, look, if they're taking our kneecaps, someone kneecaps got to go. All right. But in terms of how Martin Luther King went, he was like, it doesn't matter how many times y'all spit in our face, do all the other stuff, we are going to stay in that peace. And it's through that Pisces thing. That doesn't make any sense. Why isn't he not doing that? But that created such a bigger impact back to everything else, right? Probably even in his personal world. He was a minister. So he's talking the word of God. Pisces is a emotive sign, very connected to the divine. So when we're putting those two things together, granted, we know more of his story, but just those two things together with his sun and moon, as a sun in Capricorn, you're demanding, you're going to lead the charge, you're ready to be a leader. And on the moon end, you are a really sensitive person. You're really feeling through the parts of the collective, right? Sun and moon. And let's just head off to the rising one more time, just to let that go. So right here on the left, we see his AC. Now, granted, you will always find the rising sign at the very left of the chart. It starts off the first house right here. We're not getting into this yet. Start on the first house right here. Concept. Now, his rising sign is in Taurus, which is in Earth. Let's refer back one last time to the other thing. I think we've seen his chart enough to kind of get the gist of it. I'm going to switch back over to present something else. I can just automatically do that. Wow, the more we learn. Look at this. Oh shoot. Oh, that's cool. Anyway, sorry, I'm figuring out stuff. I'm a genius. Okay, so let's get up to his Taurus portion of things, right? So Taurus, we talked about him. He's a Taurus rising. This got messed up in formatting, but that's okay. Excuse this. Ignore my Mars and Virgo having a conniption. It's not happening. Nothing's going on here, I swear. So we have Taurus. What happens with Taurus? Taurus is vibe. They show love through appreciation and loyalty. They barter with the currency of love that they give, right? And if you love something enough, you're going to buy it, right? They're possessive with themselves and their loved ones. Let's use Martin Luther King as this example one more time. When his Taurus rising, what did he do? There's a famous photo of Martin Luther King leading the march on Washington. Okay. I want to find where he was standing in the front. But there's this picture of him where he's like standing in the, there we go. This is close enough. Y'all would get the vibe. Oh my God. Why are they trying to have me sign into a subscription? I just want to see an article. Do you see why I did an Astrology 101? I remember finding stuff without anything else. Anyway, but all this to say, and despite even the picture itself, he was basically leading the charge and in the front and willing to be in the front to make that happen. And that's Taurus's stance. That's the quote unquote stubborn of Taurus that we all enjoy because they're willing to have that moment, to stand up to that, right? So I wanted to put you onto the planets. That's the big three. And so even without you knowing about Martin Luther King's background, you can at least get where that characterization came from. And you can now see where those things have played out into someone who has been so famous and as prominent as him, right? So shout out to Dr. Martin Luther King for being the king. You feel me? It takes a good man to be king. All right. So appreciate you. I'm glad that helped and gave y'all a little bit of context. We're going to get into another celebrity chart in a bit. But until then, let's get into this. Oh, I'm clicking all types of shit. Where was I going? There we go. So that right there is the big three in the essence, right? And if anyone says F the big three, it's just big me, that's going to be your rising sign. And that's the last part I want to mention. The rising sign is the most important part to your entire chart. And in ancient times, if someone would have asked me, hey, yo, bro, what's your sign? I would tell them I'm an Aries. I wouldn't tell them I was a Sag. I would tell them I'm an Aries. Why? That was my aura. That's my essence. That's who I am. That's where I'm standing up. I'm fighting this out. But that's just the fire part of that in the process. I'll give y'all context. Excuse the silliness. You knew that was popping up at some point, but that's what y'all got here for. Okay. Let's get to this next part, right? So I call these the three hearts. This is my personal verbiage for it. Anyone else says it, I'm gonna fight them. I'm fighting. It's all good. But what I'm saying though, in terms of this, the three hearts of the body, I did a lot of digging and soul searching, and I've read through a lot of different, like from Western to Eastern to everything else like that. Everything was kind of like mind, body, spirit, right? Or mind, heart, will, or like heart, mind, gut. But in my head, the three hearts are the brain, right? Your actual heart, clearly, and then your gut. Like that gut is technically that. That is the other side to that. That is one of the most intelligent parts to your entire system outside of those things. So I wanted to break this down as three hearts. See how we're talking about planets, but I'm talking about ourselves. These are how these things relate, right? And before we move on from this part, I'm gonna get ahead of myself. Let's get into this part. Mercury, word. So I did a Mercury masterclass as well. So if you wanted to double down to learn more about Mercury, feel free to hop on over there. But let's talk about it right here. Mercury represents communication and intellect. It reveals how you think, process information, and express yourself verbally and in writing. It represents your logical and analytical mind, right? So, one secret about the Mercury sign is that your Mercury sign cannot be 2 signs away from your sun sign. The sun and Mercury are like that. There's a lot of people that have their sun and Mercury in the same area, and those are our big yappers. They can't help themselves from big yapping. You might be like, hey, yo, you a Gemini. They're like, nah, I'm a Taurus, but then their Mercury's in Taurus, and now they're big yappers because this represents how their role, their ego, is again trying to link to how they speak and talk, right? So I'm gonna break this down briefly, and then we're gonna hop into a chart. So I want to go through Venus as well, do Mars, get into a chart. Now that I gave y'all a little bit more of that first, Now, Venus. We all love Venus. Everybody love Venus. So I love Venus. You love Venus? I love Venus. Venus, right, is the planet of love and beauty, and is our heart, right? When you love somebody, it's like, look at you over there, all doing that. They're probably appealing to your Venus, right? When someone gives you something and you're like, wow, this is an amazing gift, and you feel those warm little fuzzies that we all like to talk about and we all chase in our lives, that is your Venus sign being pleased. That is your Venus sign being like that, right? It's a receptivity of the way that you're getting things. Now, granted, you can have your Venus in a masculine sign. So I'm going to use, let's say, Venus in Aries. Again, I'm just using Aries because it's easy. But using Venus in Aries, Venus is normally in Libra, right? Which is also a masculine sign, but we'll get there later. But the idea is just like the tonality of Venus wanting what she wants is a little bit more aggressive. That's the type of lady who would drag me onto the dance floor unbeknownst to me, and I'm like, I guess I'm dancing now, right? That's Venus in Aries, so to speak. And they enjoy bringing people out their comfort zones to get them going, to get them having that good sense of fun, right? Now, granted, Venus is, again, what we love, what we want to receive, and also what we enjoy viewing. So if you have Venus in a certain sign, that might explain to you why you like a certain piece of art. That might explain to you why artists you like hits a certain chord the way that they do. They might have similar energies, or that song has a certain energetic frequency, or maybe they're singing about someone that has that sign or that energetic. That's one of those things to point out, right? So, and let's move into Mars. Mars is the least talked about astrological planet ever. And it sometimes bothers me, but I actually completely understand why it's not as popular as the other side. Because Mars is about men. Mars is about guys. Why would we talk about that? No, but genuinely, Mars is how we push action forward, right? Mars is how we push things forward. Mars is also how our temper and our temperament works. And depending on where you have it, it depends on different, right? If you have Mars in Earth, you might be more patient. You might be way more patient than you think, right? If you have Mars in water, you're going to be a little passive aggressive. You're going to be like, you hate that person. When you walk in somewhere, with a friend, and then they eyeing up and down your friend, and you're like, yo, why are you so mad? They're like, oh man, I was here like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I ain't tip as much. You're like, why didn't you tip them? They remember, they feel that. Like that's very like that Mars and water kind of energy, so to speak. Like they remember those things. Now let's read this definition and keep it moving right here. So Mars represents drive and action. It reveals your energy, motivation, and how you assert yourself. It represents your passion, ambition, and how you pursue your goals. So learning your Mars learns how you can get stuff done. A lot of people, unfortunately, and now granted, I understand this. A lot of people in terms of manifestation are like, Venus, I want this thing, bring this thing in. And meanwhile, low key, a lot of us need to work on our Mars and just getting that first initial thing moving, right? But Mars is a more taboo one. Mars is representing war and fighting and all this other negative stuff. But Mars is also that same person that goes to the gym every day to get that thing done. Mars is also that same person who wakes up every morning to make sure that all the stuff is clear so the rest of us can have a good day. And this is going to be in all these different regards, just to kind of give you concept. But let's hop on over again to one of the different charts that we were talking about. I'm going over to the chat to see, does anyone have any questions as I'm going about this so far? I'm just pulling up one of the other charts. Raise a hand. What's good, bro? What do you need to know?
So just touching on like Venus and Leo, or just like this is what I'm trying to understand to make sure I understand it. So like my Venus is in Leo, and you said like you like certain songs and stuff like that kind of resonate with that frequency. So I feel like it explains why I like Johnny Hartman because or like Nat King Cole, because they're like literally singing with like that feeling of adoration.
Yeah. Sure. And so, that's a great point. No, that's a phenomenal point. I thank you for sharing, because like if you think about even old music like that, they didn't have the technology, which is Aquarius, other side. We'll get there later. But they didn't have all the technology to make it happen. So a lot of those things where we might be able to fix stuff with auto-tune, we're in the future. Everyone can sing now. They're singing from the heart. You know what I mean? Like they're really
right.
And so as someone who has Venus and Leo or Venus and fire, you're like, oh, I love the passion that's coming from this. So that's a really good point in terms of like, maybe you're not listening to like everything else, but that's what's provoking that part. And you're also going to let people that have that sense of confidence or are willing to bring up that, like, that specific level of passion, so to speak. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thank you.
No, of course. And Maria, you just typed one down here. How do you find out what your rising sign is if you don't know your time of birth? Maria, you text me after this. We're going to figure that out. You text me, you email me, whatever the case is. I'm decent at finding people's rising signs again. I've done this for a while. I found a few rising signs in my day. It's kind of hard to do, but if you know what you're doing, you're good. I think we got this. We'll figure it out. But for real, just let me know, because that's going to be really critical, and the rest of this is going to make even more sense. So someone said Amy Winehouse. I'm going to go through Amy Winehouse real quick. Rest in peace to her. But Amy Winehouse is an excellent example to point out this Mercury, this, that. And even as we just said, there's a Venus and Leo. Amy Winehouse always sang from the heart. You know what I'm saying? So let's get into this. We're presenting something else. Boom. Look at her. Amy Winehouse. Legend. Okay. So the main portion to Amy Winehouse, we talked about the sun, moon, and rising, right? So we already kind of got that down. So she was a Virgo sun, moon in Capricorn, Gemini rising. The quicker that you can get people's big threes together, the more that the rest of this chart will start to make sense. But always emphasize the big three. If anybody wants to break down or put down what they're getting from their big three based off of what I was saying before or their PowerPoints, feel free to drop it in the comments. But I at least wanted to give y'all both that sentiment in there. So if you want to give a take on what you think of the big three based off what you've heard so far, drop it in the comments. No judgment at all. I just want to see where y'all are at, see what we can point out. Oh, Georgia Smith found. Anyway, going back to my thing, clicking before I get distracted. All right, let's get it. Let's talk about Mercury. And actually, I love the fact that we picked her because she has a Mercury retrograde and it's on her sun. What we were just talking about before. All right, let's dig in a little bit deeper here. Excuse all this. Sidebar. Okay. Mercury retrograde. The tip. Oh, shit. Not, forget it. Anyway, sorry. So, Mercury retrograde, right? Basically, Mercury retrograde in someone's birth chart is going to play out differently than how Mercury retrograde is happening in the sky, right? As a matter of fact, people that are born with Mercury retrograde in their charts, retrograde is every day for them, except for when it's retrograde. And I need you to get this a different context, right? If you have Mercury direct and it's regular, you good. You know what I'm saying? If you have Mercury and it is retrograde, it's not particularly a detriment. But I have to point out to y'all that sometimes it's going to take you a little bit longer to understand certain things. But what does that do? That makes for a great artist. Why? Because people that make great art have to think about it. They have to sit about it. She has to spend a little extra time maybe writing her songs. She has to spend a little extra time maybe getting down the concept that she wants to put out. And with that being said, she also has this on her sun. I'm not getting super deep into aspects for this 101. I will be throwing a 102 where I'll get it like way deeper on this, but this is what's known as a conjunction. And that's when two planets work together. But remember how I said to you, if you have your sun somewhere, Mercury can only be one sign before in the same sign or one sign after. Hers is super tight knit, right? So she was born taking her time to explain the things she has to explain. As a matter of fact, the Mercury retrograde we have coming up is going to be in Virgo. So maybe even listening to some Amy Winehouse energetically during that Mercury retrograde that's coming up in her sign where this is happening will give you some context into parts of your own life. This is how we start using astrology energetically in our world, just to kind of show you that concept, which is something that I try to pride myself on, to be honest. Now, granted, we have another interesting in between of how these signs could play out. We have Venus also on her Mars. So remember how I was saying Venus is the planet of love. It's about receptivity. It's about bringing stuff in, right? And we just said you have Venus and Leo. So we use a Venus and Leo example. And what I just said, she's singing. She was able to sing and tear it up based off what? The power of her heart and what she was singing and the things she was saying that took her a long time to think about with Mercury. Now, her Venus in Leo, she wants to be adored, right? Which is really what it is. You want to be adored. You want to like, oh, yes, put me on that pedestal. Oh, you have me on another poster? As you should, darling. There's this like confidence. There's a swagginess that comes with that. Now, Mars, in a way Mars is doing is that she's going to show you how she feels. Now, you might notice that little tiny R next to that Venus point, right? I'm gonna get to you in just a second, Maria, with that other question. But when it gets to that specific portion, when it gets to that Mars part, now Mars is that action of Leo. Let's hop into Leo in 20 degrees over on the other thing, just so y'all can get that concept and we can gel that together. And I do want to move on from there to the next two and then circle back because I think this is really what's going to give y'all a better understanding of how that works. So let's skip on over to the next thing, and then I'm going to answer the question that you asked prior, Maria. So, boom. Okay. So when we looked at her Mars and her Venus, I'm going to point this out specifically, then I'll do the same for her Mercury. But she had it through 20 and 29 degrees. So what is that ruled by? The planet Mars. Let's double up on that Mars energy. This gets a little confusing. This is confusing. If you are like, I'm confused, I need to go look at that thing, please go look at it versus just trying to figure it out on your own. 100%, this is a guide for you to reference, okay? That's really this part. Don't feel any type of way because you don't have it down yet. I'm explaining a lot of things, but when someone asks you a question in 2 months from now, you're going to be like, yeah, that's what that is. So no worries. So Master Sorcerers, this was still a concept. This is a concept that I got again from the Peace Dealer thing that I linked y'all to as well. But what they're saying is that they psychically project their heart through passion. What was their passion? Singing, song. I could pull up an Amy Winehouse song right now and we either all dancing like, or we crying in the club together. And that's just because that passion is being projected. And she wants that back. So she was wanting the same magic that she was able to push out and wearing her heart on her sleeve because Venus and Mars were both together. So I hope that gives a little bit more concept in terms of how that works. Please let me know if anyone's confused, because I know that there's like a lot of things that I am getting to, but I hope that that ends up helping a bit. And now I do want to talk about the Mercury retrograde again. How do you see from her chart that she has Mercury in retrograde? I'm going to show you one more time. So if anyone ever has anything retrograde in their chart, which isn't a bad thing in the slightest, right? But if you have it in the chart, you were asking how I knew it was retrograde. Oops. Anyway, usually there's like an R. Usually when there's any type of retrograde, you're going to see an R or an RX next to it. So if you ever see an RX next to anything, let's see if there's anything else that she has. The nodes are always retrograde, but that's a different topic for a different time. And I have a full class on that too. So if you want to check that out, have fun. But this is the idea when it gets to that. So when I talked about the sun, moon, and rising, and let's talk about her big six, just to give us a concept since we're already here. So what is Amy Winehouse's big six? What is going on in her energetic world that we know of? Well, she has her sun in Virgo, which is her sun in Earth. She has her moon in Capricorn, which is her moon in Earth. And she has her rising in Gemini, which is in air. So when I talk about Earth, and air, right, this is part of what I learned from Deborah Silverman in my classes, right? When we talk about that 3 combination, she's going to be a grounded person. Let's head back to the tome one more time. I like how it's called the tome. Head back to the tome. We're gonna find it from the tome. We're gonna go back over here. Share this tab instead. Oh, I figured out more stuff. Wow, make it easy. So this next portion to things, Earth sign. So what is she mainly? She's practical. She's grounded. She's reliable. But where's her rising sign? In air. So she still has a flavor of being intellectual and social and still communicative, but she's going to have a lot of opinions on things. She's going to have a lot of practical viewpoints on things. She's going to want to stay in her lane. And as we know, she has made her own aesthetic. She made her own vibe based off of who she was as a person to solidify that. So I hope that gives some more concept to all of this in this process. Is everyone doing okay so far? Just make sure that you drop it down. We're probably going to go over a little bit into 4. All right, cool. Again, I know this is a lot. And if you feel like it's a lot, it is. This is what I would rather give y'all the truth and a real breakdown in real time than have y'all be like, well, what is a Mars sign? That's really what this is for. And again, there's a recording. So just let me know. All right. Ooh, houses is a little too much. All right, let's get. So now that it's a lot. I told you it's a lot. So let's get into this next part. And this is the social planets, right? Now, this is luck and lessons. I know exactly who I want to pull up for this one. There were a certain person. I know who I want to pull up for this one. So I'm going to pull them up over on the side here. But when it comes to this Jupiter, expansion, opportunities, Jupiter is known as a planet of luck and abundance. It represents growth, expansions, and opportunities in astrology. Now, granted, Jupiter is one of the most beneficial planets, but I always point this one thing out. A lot of people think Jupiter is just luck. A lot of people think Jupiter is just like, oh, things are going to go okay. It's fine. Jupiter is also the reason why The Rock is in all of those different adventure movies. And they're like, how did we have this big grand adventure, right? When we think about stuff like Indiana Jones, when we think about those big grand like coming of age stories, a lot of those stories are kind of guided off this principle of Jupiter. Yes, at the end of it, here's that big treasure chest that was there and you just opened it up and oh my God, we are set for the rest of our lives. Who would have thought? But they're not counting about the giant spiders you had to fight. They're not accounting for the other things you had to go through. That one airship that y'all did that ended up crash landing and y'all survived to get past that. Jupiter is about the adventure of finding your luck. And in finding your luck, you have a certain sense of spirituality from. As a matter of fact, I literally have Jupiter as my background. Like the idea with this is that there is always a different story. And with Jupiter, always comes a story. So what's the story of Jupiter? Why is this called the social planets, right? So I was talking about the big 6. That's your personality. If you want to boil down your like personality every day, that's going to be your big 6. When you want to start talking about how society is moving, about larger like changes in the world, these are the 2 social planets to do it. Jupiter is all about expansion and Saturn is about restriction, but they both gift you and they both challenge you, but in different ways. Again, Jupiter will give you all the keys. Here's the sword that you need to fight the dragon. Here's this, but you're going to have to go fight that dragon. And it's like, huh? What do you mean? Right? And maybe I'm using a Hercules reference from Disney because that was my favorite movie growing up. But it's like, Oh shoot, there's a Hydra. Chop it at the head. Oh no, there's another head that pops up. Chop the other head. Now there's 100 of them. What just happened here? Jupiter again will show you and bring you abundance. So be careful with the abundance that people talk about with Jupiter, because it's going to expand on whatever you put into it. And that's what I think people get confused. A lot of people look about abundance. It's like, are you putting real like love and luck into that? Are you really trying to put a well-faringness into it? Because there are people who are abundant, but if you're trying to be abundant by crushing other people in the process, it's not going to work that way. Jupiter is also indulgence, it's humor, and it's the places in your world where you might be larger than life, right? So to put an example, there's a lot of different aspects to this. But ladies, let's say you have a Jupiter in a certain sign, right? Let's say you got Jupiter in Scorpio, where you might trigger certain people with that Scorpio energy by just showing up. That's not because you're doing anything wrong, but there's a larger than life quality. You might be like, I'm used to walking in and being the sexiest in the room. I'm used to walking in and everyone pays attention to this. And you might meet someone with Jupiter in that sign and you're like, why are they getting all that? Why is everyone looking over to them instead? Why is all this other stuff happening? Now, if you're a non-hater type, you might be like, oh my God. Like if you're the Scorpio, being like, oh my God, Jupiter and Scorpio. Wow, I love the way your hair is. Wow, oh my God, you're really taking up this room. That will both benefit the both of y'all, right? So instead of, let's say, that one person hating from the other corner, y'all might be in the same function, and now y'all are like doubling up on the attraction. Y'all are getting way more people coming up to both of y'all for different reasons. You get what I'm saying? Jupiter and Leo means extra. You're damn right it does, because Jupiter and Leo is like, let's be extra, but open up everyone's heart in that process. Now, granted, sometimes, and this is the two side parts of Jupiter, and this is coming from a Sag. Trust me, I love being ran by the planet of good luck, but I understand that there's levels to this. So again, Jupiter and Leo, yes, you get to be extra. You're really meant to really spiritually help bring people into a different capacity of their love and of their life. But then again, you might be so expansive in the heart that someone who might be a little bit emotionally disconnected is now feeling challenged. Oh my God, are they trying to feel a type of way about me? Oh my God. And so when you have Jupiter in a sign, you have to continuously shine in that regard, despite whatever feedback you get, because that's your luck to have. And let's say you do have that Jupiter in a place, so someone else is being weird, keep to your Jupiter and things will open up. That's why when people do hate on certain things and then things happen well, that happens. So someone just said they have Jupiter in Capricorn, specifically retrograde. So let's just use that concept as well. And I'm not going to open up another chart for this. I want you to look at your own chart for these. This is actually really important. I want you to look at your own chart for Jupiter, Saturn, and then the next three afterward, because these are more generational and outer world, right? Do you ever let us see your chart? Hell no. Back out. What you mean? Get out of my face. Anyway, no. No. What? No, like, at some point, I will actually do that and other stuff. But yeah, just know I'm beautiful. That's all everyone needs to know. That's all y'all were wondering anyway. No, like, let me snap back in for real. All right. So genuinely speaking, all that aside, we're getting to the Jupiter portion. So I'm gonna use Jupiter in Capricorn because I have Jupiter in Capricorn in my chart. I'll tell y'all about it. I have Jupiter in Capricorn, right? So Jupiter in Capricorn is one of those signs where their luck comes from consistent hard work and putting in all that they can to do those things. When I talk about the stuff that I do, I never try to say it in terms of like, haha, look at all the things that I accomplished. I'm one of the best to ever do it. Although that could be true for some people. What it is about, genuinely, I had a reading yesterday. And someone pointed something out to me. They're like, oh my God, I saw your old Venus videos back when you were like so young. And I'm like, if you look at it, like I was in my childhood room making the stuff that I cared about, literally getting yelled at 5 minutes after like my thing was up. But I knew, despite me not knowing what was going on, I knew that me following that path would lead to something else. And now we're here. You know what I'm saying? I'm in my spaceship somewhere in LA, just existing and stuff. But like, how did I get out of that cycle? I had to work every step of that. No one gave me $1 about that. No one helped out financially about that. I had to figure out a way every time. And thankfully, I was able to build a community in order to do that. But using Jupiter, there was a lot of struggle where my Jupiter was first in order to gain that. So that's why I want to tell you that Jupiter is not always just sunshine and rainbows. Jupiter is not just like this is the end of the rainbow. It's about the journey that it takes to get to the end of the rainbow. Right, I'm gonna use Jupiter and Pisces as this one last example, just to give you concept with Jupiter and Pisces, and let's actually go over again to this. Oops, whatever, screw it, same thing. Jupiter and Pisces. So, emotive, intuitive, and sensitive. So, where does your luck happen? When you're in your emotional, right? When you're following your intuition. And when you're being sensitive to how other people are feeling. How does that show up in the grand scale of things? This is why I left y'all this too. You are going to, with your Jupiter, the planet of luck, you manifest through the intangible of your imagination. So this is why I wanted to show y'all all of these pieces. You get what I'm saying? Because I'm like, this is how we start to plug and play. This is how we start to like connect all those complicated parts of astrology in a way that makes sense. And I still have to keep moving through just to make sure that we make the full part in this enough time. Granted, no matter how much I teach y'all in this next like hour or so, it's not going to be everything. And if y'all do want to expand on more, please feel free to reach out, ask about it, etc. Ooh, it's clicking. That's what we're meant. That's what we're here for. You appreciate it more when you work hard for it. Facts. But that is a very Jupiter and Capricorn theme. But let's talk about what everyone has to work hard for. No matter what their sign is, you won't have to work for this one. And that's this. Life's better on Saturn. Can't sprint this pattern. Drifting away. Anyway, this is what SZA was talking about. And I know SZA's an astrologer, so she's actually being for real. So with that being said, it's like SZA astrologer, my homie. She was saying that from a personal note. Post Saturn return. Whew. Anyway, Saturn. Restriction, challenges. Saturn is associated with lessons and challenges, discipline, responsibility, and a need for structure. Now, granted, a lot of people like to hate on Saturn. Daddy Saturn, as you know, but a lot of people like to hate on Saturn, right? But Saturn is the joke, the running joke of the hot girls and girlies in the sprat summer is this Daddy Saturn, right? That's when you are paying homage to Saturn. When you become the other side of Saturn, it's like, oh no, why is Saturn keep not letting me win? Why is that I'm putting in this work, but it's not paying off? I just put in 3 weeks of me trying to do this thing and it didn't work. It's like, okay, did you try to do it for 3 months? It's like, what do you mean 3 months? At that point, I'm wasting my time. Well, Saturn, most importantly, is the planet of time. Most importantly, is the planet of time. Why am I saying it this way? Because Saturn in our charts is our life lesson. And it's through our life lesson that when we start to subscribe to it, when we start to lean into it deeper, when we start to accept that, oh shit, this is going to be hard. Oh man, this is going to take me more time than I would like it to. That's when we get those conversations. And I promise you, I've watched interviews so many interviews, so many people. I don't even have to like the person. I'm watching an interview. I just want to learn, right? The interview, when someone becomes successful, almost every single time, unless you're a Nepo baby. But even then, they still have to say that, right? They're like, yo, how did you make it to where you did? They're like, it took a lot of hard work, dedication, and I never stopped, right? I know a lot of y'all know that I work with Deborah Silverman. That's OG. That's my mentor. Cool. Love her to death. She pointed out the Saturn portion to me as much as she did. Because when I first met her, I was just like, oh, shoot, you the OG. You probably the person that has the steepest pockets that I at least have ever known in astrology. What's the secret? What's the sauce? What's going on? She literally gets up every day. This isn't like I mean, it's kind of tea, but she gets up every day and she just does the same routine, the same structure, the same discipline. She gets to work early in the day. She's done by work by the end of the day. But because she has followed into her own life challenges, lessons, learned by her own discipline and responsibility, learned by her own structure, she was able to keep pushing that forward. Now, when you turn anytime between 27 and 30 years old, and the second one is anytime between 58 to 60 years old, or I'm sorry, 57 to 60 years old. That's what we know as a Saturn return. Now, y'all are intelligent, spiritual, lovely individuals. So y'all know your astrology. So either you learned your astrology afterward and you saw how those lessons were happening then, or you're learning it before. So when those lessons pop up, you're like, oh, shoot, I need to embrace my Saturn portion of things a bit more here. I'm being challenged here. I need to step into that, because Saturn is like what's hardest for you to do. But anytime you pull it off, that's when people have like the utmost respect, right? So yeah, Saturn is one of the most important planets in astrology. I would almost look at it, if I were y'all, and to like really learn the seriousness of Saturn, I would look at it right after the big three, even before the rest of the big six. I would look at it just because it shows you the life lesson, how much you have to go, what energetic that is, you know? So I'm gonna pull up. Hold on. How long does Saturn return last? Or if you learn fast, is it shorter? That's a great question, Shafali. So with Saturn returns, some people's Saturn returns are like 3 years straight. It really depends on your chart. Some people Saturn returns have like a longer time frame to it. You might have a quote unquote bigger destiny, so to speak, or there's like a huge thing you have to do for that. On the flip end, some people Saturn return is like a year and a half max. And it's like, oh, y'all have the easy route, but that might not be the easy route. Maybe they have worked their entire lives to help clear out that karma, so to speak. So there are a lot of differences in regards to that. But the main point is that the more that you lean into the discipline of like knocking it out, the more that you're going to like get better at it, the more you're going to be, revered for it versus it being your detriment. That's the main point to that Saturn. I hope that helped a little bit with that. I've been working with my Saturn heavy this year. Mine is in Taurus. Okay, so let's use Saturn and Taurus per another example. Let's look on over at Taurus. Saturn and Taurus, restrictions and challenges. Where are those restrictions and challenges going on? In terms of how you might be bringing through your appreciation and loyalty in the way that you might have possessed other things. Sometimes people with Saturn and Taurus, it's hard for them to look past maybe their certain possessions. Maybe it's for Saturn and Taurus, it's a little bit harder to look past the fact that their old ex might have moved on. Just using this as a concept because it's like, I'm holding on. But Saturn and Taurus is like learning how to let go and learning how to keep on to the things that are meant for you and not letting those go. That's Saturn and Taurus. Now, this is going to work out in every sign. And like I said, that's why I left this for you. You get to plug and play. You get to see that out. And my biggest suggestion to you, I'm going to be so honest. All of these notes that you're reading right now that are here, I first wrote out pen to paper. Like I wrote them out. So as much as I can teach you right now, it's really about the way that you put that going down and make your own notes. The thing about astrology is that this is my rendition of it. This is a rendition of it. This is a 2-hour thing I built time up for to do that. If someone asked me, the reason why I love astrology is you could ask me the same thing tomorrow and I'll have something different for you, right? That's the power of this astrology thing. So it's your interpretation that's going to take it to the next level. But these are the core components to help make you really fucking good really fast. So just to kind of give you that concept, I hope this is helping. Is there any difference to have both social planets in retrograde? That's actually a great question. So let me go back to the social planets picture. So for the social planets, if they're both in retrograde, here's my tea for you, at least. If you have Saturn retrograde and Jupiter retrograde, you don't have to look for your luck. You don't have to go find your lessons. You don't have to go find that thing. They're coming for you. So if you have Saturn direct and Jupiter direct, you might have to go actively look to do that. Oh, I need to go do this, right? A part of my Saturn is like, bro, you need to go to the gym. It's been a really hard time to keep me in the gym, but that's a part of my Saturn lesson. It's like you have to just go in and discipline it regardless, right? Now, if I had Saturn retrograde, I would just somehow already kind of be there. Like I would already be there and be like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm doing this whole thing. Like, what's the point for? But you see how like one of them is like, oh man, it's so hard to get there. And the other one's like, I'm already doing this, but like, what's the purpose? So that's kind of how that would play out in that regard. Let's say Jupiter retrograde. If you have Jupiter retrograde in your chart, you might be randomly like, someone calls you like, hey, we have a trip going to France and we have an extra seat. Do you want to go? You're like, I don't have any money. They're like, we'll pay for you the whole way through. You're like, yes. But at the same time, the concept is like, you didn't go look out for that adventure. That adventure went to come find you randomly. That's kind of the key component there in your chart, specifically in your chart. So I hope that gives you context. Okay. Yes, you always read someone's Saturn after the big three, and that's why you came through and you're getting the astrology coaching with me. Look at that. I got you. You know how that goes. Anyway, appreciate the love for y'all. But this is the main portion to that. Now I'm going to get through these last 3 planets, and this is when things get weird. I want to point this out right now, and I know it's a lot for some people to take in. There is a lot of people who think they're working with the outer planets and think that they're tapped into the outer planets. And some people are cold. Some people are mad cold with it. Some people are born with it. Some people is Maybelline. Who knows? No, but genuine. Some people are for real born with it. And they're already like tapped in fully. Or they have one of these outer planets on their big 3 or on their big 6. And when they talk about they use these planets, they might for real be right. But when I tell you that these planets are out of our realm of control most of the time, they're out of our realm of control most of the time. The last 3 planets of the astrological vibe are all about larger scale societal change. These are generational planets that end up coming through. You have a stellium and Pluto. Okay, let me explain. So in any of these, so to speak, you might have Pluto in your stellium, and that might give you a connection to Pluto that's a little different. But I'm going to explain this right now. Let's get through it, right? You have them all in retrograde again, so you don't even have to look for it even further. It's going to come find you. So that's another concept to this, right? So I'm going to give y'all some context here. And when I say lower octave, this isn't in any disrespect, but I need to point this out because this is going to really show you how these planetary energies work. So did you notice something here? When I was like, oh, the big 6, and I was talking about how these other aspects work, right? So all of these planets here, oh shit. Ignore that. Ignore me. This happens in real life all the time. Okay, so when Uranus, and this is why I wanted to point this out this way. So Uranus is associated with change, innovation, and rebellion. It represents the urge to break for freedom and breaking away from traditional norms. So on a grand scheme of things, Uranus is the reason why we have technology, period. Uranus, that Uranian vibration is why we have technology. Straight up. Why? How much change and innovation it take from she's a witch, she just lit a candle, get her, to like, oh my gosh, she's on here listening to astrology from some guy, get him. Like, it's like there's a lot of change, there's a lot of difference that has happened there. Where now the flip end, a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm working with Uranus, things are changing. They're working with Mercury, they're mastering their mind. So when I'm like, the lower octave of that is Mercury, just know that like, even if you are in a moment where you're like, I feel like there's so much change, you need to lean on that lower octave because that's what we have control of. I'm giving y'all some sauce with this. Like, I'm not playing. This is what we have control of in our day-to-day. We have control of what we say in our day-to-day life. We can control how we like not everything we think, but we can control how we convey what we think. We can control those other parts of things. So maybe innovation and rebellion is on the mind. But look to your Mercury before you look to your Uranus, because Uranus is about like rebellion to the point where I know there was a certain time frame in terms of just the US and its relations to like Iran and Iraq. There were people who were saying TikTok, boom. That's also a Uranus thing. Rebellion, like all that stuff. So like when we get so far out of that and we're in the outer planets, we start getting into some, that's when things start to get a little wicked, according to Zevi. I hope y'all understood that reference. But like that's when things get wicked. But when we are utilizing that and we're learning how to ground it, and so you're going to ground that Uranus energy through your Mercury. You can't even start to work with Uranus until you master your Mercury, right? Or until you really start working with your Mercury. So I hope that gives you some context, because I do see some people where they're like, oh, the guy work with Neptune. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Right? Some people do. And some people do, and they cold. I don't got nothing to say to y'all. Shoot. Like, you feel me? But this is the difference in that regard. So let's get to Neptune. Neptune is the planet of dreams, spirituality, and intuition. Neptune's also like when you're blackout drunk. Neptune is like the highest part of spirituality, where it's like, I meditated so long, it sniffed in so much air that I think I have become God. And the other side of it is like, oh, can't see nothing. Like Neptune is just when you're out of your mind, you're in a different world. Just the realm of imagination, creativity, to the subconscious mind. So here's the thing. And this is why, like, even with people that have prominent Neptune, you know, the way that they consume either drugs, the way that they consume anything recreational, it gets really important, right? Because like if you're overdoing it, you might stay in that Neptunian space, right? To give y'all some concept, Neptune at its height is that super eclectic. Like I'm thinking like not Banksy specifically, but like how Banksy will make something and like disappear off, and it's like, wow, there's just art here, and we're all having this moment. It's like, whoa, how did we all miss this? And now this person's there, and that's so cool, and whoa, amazing. We don't even know who this person is. That's Neptune at like a good side of things. Where I live again in LA. Unfortunately, we do have like a way higher homeless population than we should, and we really do need to do something in order to like have less houselessness. But when you see that person who may be on the street or dealing with drugs or dealing with whatever that they have to in that regard, that can also be Neptune. That's like when you sometimes speak to someone, or sometimes you might walk by someone, they might be asking for something and they're in a different world. That's also Neptune. So when people are like, oh my God, I'm over here channeling Neptune, dog, you do not want to channel Neptune without any type of like guidance or that, because Neptune is literally outside of all of what we think we know about dreams, because it is a dream world, and the dream world gets real convoluted. I'm not a dream expert. I can't give you all the tea on that, but there are people who are. But that Neptunian space is the way that goes, right? So Neptune retrograde folks live in Delulu full time. Yes. Let me stop. Not particularly, but they're going to lean more on their own imagination than what people are saying, which is why for Neptune retrograde people, it's a bit harder when someone's trying to have hard rules on something, because the Neptune person's like, well, if we just get outside of that, and they're like, no, we can't. So the lower octave of that is what? Venus. Why? Because I think Neptune is a higher octave of love. You're not going to find this everywhere else this way, but I want to just give you, again, the core energetic components, because you can go into any system now, you can go into any other portion, and this will still stay true, right? I don't want you to like stay into my house system. I don't want you to stay into that. I just want to explain the one-on-one. This is everything you need to know for that part. The lower octave of Neptune is Venus. So Neptune is still higher love, because what is love at its best? Dreaming. Wow, it's like I just met the love of my life, my soulmate. Wow. That is a very Neptune and Venus kind of scenario, right? So Biafia asks, I wanted to ask if your Uranus and MC, what if your Uranus and MC are in the same sign? I think I get to midheaven later. So remind me when I get to the midheaven, because I'm going to do that in the last like 20 minutes of this, just to give y'all like that real concept. And when I do break that down, we are combining everything that we talked about, and I'm gonna show you how houses work in the easiest way. I am saving y'all so much time dealing with having to learn the houses. Okay, so the other part, Pluto. Word. Now, Pluto was probably what sparked off my astrology journey, as I wrote a very angry article in 3rd grade about or 2nd grade, when they decided to make Pluto not a planet. At the time, I was not into astrology, but I do vividly remember being so mad about this to the point where, like, I was untamed, and I didn't know why. I was just like, "What the fuck you mean Pluto's not a planet?" Right? As time progressed, this is the idea of it, though. Pluto is associated with transformation, power, and regeneration or rebirth. Right? I say that later. Anyway, it represents the process of death and rebirth, as well as deep psychological transformation. So, Pluto intrinsically is the planet of change, but I would almost say it's a planet of alchemy. The reason why I'm saying alchemy is because, according to the laws of alchemy, I'm paraphrasing a lot of shit here, but there's a law of equivalent exchange, right? Where in order for you to get or gain something, you have to kind of sacrifice something of the same ilk or of the same regard. We practice things like that if you have any form of religion. If you ever practice Lent, that's one of those similar type of vibes. If you ever did that, like that 40 days, 40 nights piece, where that's one of those things you're sacrificing blank, and you're supposed to just like gain, or at least have the room to revive, or have the room to transform with whatever other side to that word. Now, Mars is a lower octave of Pluto. Now, Mars and Pluto, I'm gonna be so honest, they both have a capacity for end gaming certain things, flatlining it, if you will. I'm gonna go kill this thing, so to speak. With this idea being said, Mars and Pluto have this intensity in terms of the totality of things. So Mars might, for real, like Mars might beat you up and throw you over to the side and be like, screw you. And Pluto is, if your Metro don't trust you, I'm going to. So this is the differential. And why this plays out in a larger regard, you don't really want to channel Pluto for real if you're not built for it. Is there somebody who does channel Pluto that we know? For better or worse, I am a big fan of the rap artist Future, and Future actually goes by Pluto. As a matter of fact, the reason why it's so crazy that he goes by Pluto in general is because if I pull up his chart real quick, I'm gonna give you an example. Because this guy went to go see an astrologer. This guy knows somebody. 1 second. Because if we look over here, blah blah. Where did I wanted to change it. Whatever. Present something else. Wow. Okay, so here we are. So we look at Future's chart right here. He has 0 degrees Pluto and Scorpio. That is 100% like. So someone that has this intensity in that area, and according to my calculations, that's also in his, like, I think 7th house when I looked it up. That is Pluto. So when he's like, "Oh, I'm Pluto," it's like, yeah, like this is the energetic that he's rocking with. That's why when we have the jokes about him all the time, it's like, "Oh, like he's toxic. Oh, he's this." He might not be, but he does represent that Plutonian change, that Plutonian like underworld type of quality. And sometimes you have to go into that underneath in order to find the light on the other side. Because Pluto, at the end of the day, is actually about hidden treasures, right? About hidden treasures. Think about like a dragon hiding a treasure away from the rest of the world. That's really what that Pluto section is kind of about. So someone asked a great question. What if Pluto is retrograde? Does that mean you're constantly having tower moments? That is an excellent question. And that really relates to why I was like, it's not just Pluto. Think about Mars too, because Mars is the tower card. So honestly and transparently, yes, if you have the Pluto retrograde, that sometimes means that you need that tower moment for yourself before things push forward. I hope that gives some context, but that is one of those things. Sometimes you need the tower moments, and the brand of that tower moment will show up in what sign it is. See what I'm saying? That's how that changes. Okay, I know I said a lot so far. Is everybody doing okay? I'm just doing a quick check-in. We about to get into the houses. Just want to make sure everything good. We got some we got some upvotes. We got some this. Okay. All right. I'm feeling the love. Second win. Life makes so much sense now. This is why, like, when you know your chart, when you do have that tower moment, you can lean into the tower moment versus ignoring that it's happening. Because when you ignore that it's happening, when you're like, let's lean into it, it could change in like a day. Like that's the power of astrology when you're actually for real, like utilizing it and trying to work with it versus trying to fight against it. So I hope that gives a context. Cool. I'm so happy y'all are here. For real, I appreciate y'all showing up, spending this time with me. I've been meaning to do this for a really long time, and we're going to ignore all that. So again, this is where we get more technical. So here's my question to y'all. To use the most of your time in the next 20 minutes, and you still get this to go along with you, right? I'm going to teach this like this, actually. I just put a lot of info here for all the houses. You can go through every single house if you want. I'm going to show you how houses work, but I want to point out this most important thing. When you hear houses, I think I just kicked that out. That's okay. When you hear about houses, everyone freaks out. What does that mean? What is a house? What's happening there? So the best way to put the houses is knowing the order of the zodiac signs, because the house and the zodiac sign in that energetic are still aligned, but the house is where that zodiac sign grew up. Think of it like that. So I'm going to point out the 6th house, for example. Let's just point this out. The 6th house is where the sign Virgo was born. So it doesn't matter where else Virgo shows up. Virgo was kind of born here, and vice versa. When we talk about things in the 6th house, that's going to be representing work, health, and the daily rhythms, which Virgo is typically about what? Virgos love their daily routines, right? Virgos love when they get to go to work. Virgos love being a service to others and people, right? Skills, organizations, body, nerves, hands. All of these things are still associated. So let me go on over to this chart one more time. Or does anyone else have like one last person to look up? I think I saw one beforehand, but I just don't recall. And I would rather somebody drop somebody new just to kind of keep it fresh as well. And I don't. Kendrick, love it. All right, let's go to Kendrick Lamar, my guy. AKA Benzes to me, just a car. I am me like a nibba don't exist. All right, let's get into this real quick. Present something else. This guy. So look at this guy, Kung Fu Kenny. Look at him, Compton's very own. So when we get into Kendrick Lamar and his energy, right? Let's talk about the houses. So this is where we start to really get into everything else. As a matter of fact, I talked about his 6th house, right? And let's break this down. Oh, I lied. I messed up. I talked about his. Okay. What part of Kendrick do y'all want to know most about? If you look at all of his planets and stuff, just put down what planet y'all want to know most about, so I can like utilize that to explain deeper the houses. If somebody drop whatever you see that looks interesting about him that you want me to point out. No, nobody wants to know. Jupiter, love it. Okay, so I did point out Jupiter before. Okay, so Jupiter right here is in his 7th house in Aries, right? This explains the beef that he had with Drake. It does. Why? Why did he have a beef with Drake? Quote unquote. Well, if you can see here, on the other side of his Jupiter is his rising sign. This is a really important dichotomy I'm also explaining. And the rising sign is what begins his 1st house. So Kendrick, as a person, wants to be balanced, equal, and fair about the things that he has to do. If you notice something in all the diss tracks he put out this summer, is that he was like, Drake, please, I don't want to have to do this to you. I really don't like you. I really am ready to throw these hands at Jupiter and Aries. He's like, but if you just stop, I won't have to do any of that. But Drake kept pushing, and he kept pushing, and he said, I'm gonna poke you one more time, Kendrick. What you gonna do? And that's when he got the Aries response from Kendrick. And not just a little bit of Aries. Kendrick put out the song anthem of the summer thus far, and you can't escape it because he literally made something larger than life. If you notice, even in his music video for this, and this is still talking about just Jupiter and Aries, even in his music video, he's not like particularly flashing off. He's not even saying, hey, yo, bro, I beat you. He made sure the song and everything else was around it was bigger than anything else. The worst thing that he did in that thing was wearing his close-up thing and just waving the way he did, like, bye. That was Jupiter and Aries being like, yo, you wanted this fight? You wanted this beef? Everybody got involved. I got the whole city with me. That 7th house response, those partnerships, that's everybody that he knows, his whole camaraderie. He was diabolical. Yes, because he pushed his Jupiter and Aries. He took Drake on an adventure of how does it take to get these hands despite the warnings at hand, despite him trying to be like, yo, bro, I'm trying to help you. In another song, he said, you really dissed the only person who was trying to offer you some help. That is the dichotomy between his rising sign and that 7th house. And the 7th house represents what? Partnerships, enemies, relationships. He was friends with Drake. They've made music together. They did all those other things. Drake pushed too many boundaries. Kendrick had to go do that. How many times do I have to teach you this lesson, old man? 100%. And that's the dichotomy of this, right? So the one more time, just to hop back in the tone and to kind of really point out that Jupiter portion of things. Actually, we're going to go into houses. That's really what we're doing. So let's go into the houses and let's look at the 7th house so we can see where that Jupiter, as we're saying, well, again, everything's plug and play. Let's see how that works out. So I'm clicking the wrong thing as I always do every time I present, but thank y'all for sticking with me. Darn too. And I know somebody kid running around somewhere watching this. Anyway, they probably cuss more than I do. That's not important. What I can say though, is that all we were just talking about with that was with Kendrick, which is what? 7th house, partnerships and reflections. Partnerships and reflections. The reflection was people saying Drake was the best. Kendrick was the best. How are they both the best? As a matter of fact, they're antitheses they're arch rivals by moral, right? Mr. Morale versus BBL Drizzy. You know, that's the whole thing. But granted, relationships, marriage, committed partnerships. When did Kendrick actually spaz? When he mentioned his wife and kids. When Drake said, hey, this is your relationship. Hey, I'm going to put out this rumor about your marriage. Hey, I'm going to talk about your children and your closest friends. That's when Drake became that. So you see how this is playing out. Shots are fired, but you see how that's playing out, right? To where it's like he was trying to keep the calm. And so this is how that 7th house works in terms of that. Now let's look at, let's say it's Mercury, just to give this example. Well, clearly he was saying a lot of stuff with this. So we're looking at Mercury and Cancer in the 9th house. So what is the 9th house? Mercury is his communication. He talks this way. He thinks this way. Cancer is that energetic. That's about his feelings, his family, where he's from. He always reps Compton, no matter where he goes across the globe. Still works on that process, right? And then we get to, what am I about to do? 9th house, boom. Okay, thinking fast. All right, you were okay. There we go. Ninth house, boom. So when we talk about his words, right? Higher education, long distance travel, philosophy. Through him communicating and rapping and like all these other portions, he's built higher education. I was a Kendrick like fan when he first like started, when he was still like not like the day one. I'm not going to be one of those people, but like I was really like on at an early portion of things, right? And between his first parts of things into the most recent things that he put out, he has become so much wiser in how he communicates the things that he does, in his takes on certain things, because through him communicating how he feels for so long, he has dived deeper into his higher education, and he says stuff in between things all of the time. He said like he was protected by angels. He has this type of thing. Like he knows what he's going through. He knows what's happening. Spirituality, life purpose. His life purpose was to put the music in the songs, to tell about his life, to explain his perspective. His beliefs changed over time. He was probably, when he first came out, a little bit more on the young end, maybe a little more misogynistic, maybe throwing a B word a little bit later. Then he grew up a bit, and he was talking about, hey, I know that y'all are swimming pools, drink. Everybody out here drinking. Where y'all at? His mind, his expansion on what his philosophy was, kept growing. So I wanted to give y'all that concept as well in this process. So when we talk about the totality of how do we combine those things together, that's what we do. To give you concept and context, if you really want to get the shortcut to how to really point out a chart, and I'm going to go over to Kendrick's one more time, right? This is some tea, to be honest. This is the difference between a good astrologer and a great astrologer. I'm going to be so real. I'm looking at his moon right now. Let's just use his moon for an example. When I look at his moon, first thing I'm realizing is the moon. Second thing I'm looking at is what house it's in. And then I'm looking at the sign. You see how the sign takes the least priority somehow? We get so caught up in the signs all the time. Oh, I'm a Pisces. Oh, I'm this. I look at the moon because that's where the planet's at. I look at the house, and what house is that? It's the fifth house, right? Excuse me. It's the fifth house. What is the fifth zodiac sign? Oh, that's Leo, right? So if we're talking about that house where Leo was born, and then we put in Kendrick Lamar's Pisces moon there, he's going to emotionally enjoy the performance, pushing the heart out into the world, and explaining all of those factors as well. In his own imagination, he puts his heart into how he conveys his imagination for us to be entertained by. Again, this is an example of someone that we've seen do something really extra even during this summer. This is something that we see, but this is how those communications start to gel in, right? So I know that there's a lot, and clearly I haven't even gotten through every little piece of all the things here. But does anyone have any questions so far? Is there anything that has popped up? I do have some time left in between this to really kind of put that together. Pluto in his first house. He does have Pluto in his first house. He does. So Pluto in his first house. Remember how I was saying that not everybody has a connection with Pluto? Not everybody has a connection with those higher parts. Pluto in the first house is one of those exceptions, right? It does play out like that because it's in his first house. It's in his aura. So if no one has any like further or like extra questions thus far, I'm just going to drive us through the 12 houses to kind of like bring us all home, and the houses really kind of gel together, everything in that process as well. That sounds cool. We could hop into that, and that's how I'm gonna start to like end this off at least. So thank y'all, every one of y'all, for like coming in. I really try to make this as thorough and direct as possible. I appreciate the love. Okay, I see the love. Okay. I'm gonna stop overthinking. Appreciate y'all. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next thing. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna go. Okay. So all right, let's get it. So wrong button, right button. Yeah, we did it. Okay. So the first house, the self's grand entrance, as I say, is ruled by Mars. Why? Mars is action. Mars is identity. Mars is self. What is that? Outwardly personality, first impression. And I'm going to say, to add to that, the house of the aura, right? Physical appearance and how you present yourself. Word. I'm an Aries rising. So that Aries section is in my first house. I is ruled by the head. The reason why people think I'm short isn't like online is because I just have a big ass head. I'm tall as shit, but because my head's so big, as an Aries rising, it's the only thing that people can focus on. So if you see me ever like lean in a video like this, I'm not Kai Cenat's height, but because of the way that works, that's the way that works, right? But then again, even then, that's kind of pointing out this is that first house. So whatever's in your first house space. So let's talk again about Kendrick. He had that Libra rising, but he has in his first house still has Pluto. So when he's like, who am I? One side of him is let's keep the peace. The other side of him was so like that's the concept there. Word. So the second house you need to pay attention to because it's inner and outer riches. And a lot of people are like, where's my money? Where's my financial security? Where's my value? Where's the people that I want? You got to pay attention to your second house because whatever your second house is going to show you what it is that you desire, what it is that you actually want, right? So like wherever your rising sign is, whatever is in your second house or whatever sign is your second house is going to show you this. Now, let's say you don't have anything in your second house. Does that mean you don't have any values? No, you clearly still have values. I hope, at least if you're here. But what I can say is that like you might not have the same emphasis. So I'm going to open Kendrick's chart one more time just because like a lot of people get confused about something like this. And I want to point this out. And after I get through the houses, we can wrap this up with anything else afterward. But I mean, just because it's up still. See how he has nothing in Virgo? He doesn't have any planets in Virgo to stand a third. Are you going to tell me that Kendrick didn't analytically break down Drake to a T? He doesn't have anything in Virgo, but it doesn't mean that he didn't get into his Virgo to get that going. It doesn't mean that he didn't utilize his Virgo energy to get that off. Like, you get what I'm saying? So just wanted to point that out. So our houses are always different from someone else. Like my first house is Taurus, but yours is Aries. Your houses might be different than someone else's, but that's why your specific rising sign is so important. So we can have certain things that still align in different houses, but the rising sign point that starts it off is most important. So I have my first house. It stays in Taurus. So Taurus stays in my first house for a long time, right? That's why when Tauruses do give me love, I'm like, oh, y'all really meant that. God damn. Like, you know, like it means something. But like, that's kind of the rendition of how that is. So I'm a Placidus astrologer. I use Placidus. I like to use the little specifics on things. Some people use whole signs. I think whole signs is a cop-out. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a cop-out. I think it takes away from some of the intricacies that are at hand. And I think that's why sometimes people don't believe in it because they don't see the specifics. That's my personal take. I have a lot of opinions. Still, that is part of my take on that. Let me actually go back and get through these houses real quick and that explanation. And we'll end off the one-on-one. And I am satisfied with how much I taught. And there's still notes that I didn't fully get through because how am I supposed to teach this magical, beautiful science in 2 seconds? Okay. So other thing with the second house, though, is what you cherish, material possessions, nature, the physical world, that throat respectfully, and sensuality, stability, etc. Right? That's pretty much the idea in terms of that second house space. Third house, which is associated with what? The third zodiac sign, being Gemini. Word. This is how you think, learn, share information. So no matter what's in your third house, that's going to be the thing that you're going to want to talk about with anybody, or you're going to want to talk about with like whoever. This is what you want to yap about. This is what's going to be in your third house, right? Now, the fourth house, which is ruled by Cancer, this is your emotions, instincts, home, family, ancestral roots. This is where you start doing some root work. You don't know who your family is. You don't know that in between. You don't know what's going on with that. Learn your fourth house. Learn that IC point, because that's where you're going to start to convey stuff, right? So you're like, oh, shoot, like, it feels like if you're like, man, I feel like my dad never told me all that happened in my world, right? And then you go ahead and look and you have Jupiter in your 4th house, you're probably right. These are the type of significations over time. So let's get into the 5th house. Like I said, I'm just going through these real quick because you know the signs that are associated, but I'm gonna show you why these all gel in. The sun, 5th house is ruled by Leo. Word, Leo, charisma, warmth, right? Romance, self-expression, creativity. If honestly, anybody who falls into your 5th house in terms of that energetic are going to be the people that you have the most fun with, right? This can also play out for people who are trying to go ahead and canoodle. People that have good synastry with, y'all have a great time doing the shaboink. That's all that is. It might just be a fun thing. It might just be a fling. But the concept is that it's a generation of fun versus that. That also includes you going out, you making art, you speaking on your art, all 5th house things. Right? Also includes children. So the way that you get giddy if you're playing with your kids or you're bringing them to a thing and you just see the joy and it's like, that's also the 5th house. So these are the things that are associated with that in that process. 6th house. So I said it's ruled by Mercury and the Earth. That's kind of incorrect, but I just say the Earth too because like I think Virgo has that vibe. All that being said, health and well-being habits, practical organization, anything that has to do with the 6th house has to do with your health, your consistency, and what you do on a day-to-day basis. Do you go to the gym every day? Or do you wake up every morning and eat cookies to the face like I do? Don't do that. I was just saying, like, this is the difference though. This is the rendition of that, right? Now let's get to the 7th house. So this is another house about shaboinking, but this is a house where it's about committed relationships, right? This is more so about the relationships to one another. So it can show up as Kendrick and Drake. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. Or it can show up as I love everything you do and all the parts about you and every part about you that I know and don't know. See how like that change but that same type of connection is still there. It's still about the partnership of one to the other and how that plays out and what's the balance of that too. So the 8th house, word. The 8th house, this is about the type of so the 8th house. Remember how I was saying the 5th house was also like about the good shaboing? I'm on a meeting. I could technically cuss because it's not on YouTube. Anyway, but when it comes to the 8th house, when it gets to like the deep psychological processes, the people that you might have been with that have completely changed your world from one way or another, they probably did a good job. That's going to be the 8th house scenario of like changing that. That's intimacy, that's shared resources, that's joint finances. That's why if you do come through and let's say you rocking with somebody, old boy comes through, y'all are real good intimately, and then he can't split the bill with you, you like, what was all this? That's the 8th house, because the 8th house needs the reciprocation. The 8th house needs let's dig in deeper together versus what was all that as a concept, right? Also, zodiac sign, Scorpio. You see how these things are starting to relate? Okay. 9th house. That's my house. That's me. Okay. So 9th house ruled by Jupiter, expanding horizons in the mind of the spirit. Congratulations. You have almost passed Astrology 101 now, but this is about higher education, long distance travel, philosophy, spirituality, life purpose, personal beliefs. Sagittarius, this is the house of that. If you watch any of my stuff, I have nothing else to say. I live a very 9th house existence. They're like, how did this happen? I'm like, I don't know. Just believed in it. Just spirituality, just moving in my purpose. Everything else makes sense later on. But it is about the optimism and adventure of anything in the 9th house. So when I was talking about Kendrick and that, he was learning his philosophy through how he was making his music, right? So this is where the 9th house plays out. Now the 10th house, mad important. Someone earlier asked about their MC. This is the midheaven, aka the MC. So if you see MC anywhere, they're talking about the midheaven. I have a masterclass on all about the midheaven. But to briefly break this down, this is ruled by Saturn. Career, reputation, public image. If you want to really figure out your quickest shortcut to success or being famous or having authority, that 10th house is going to be the guide, right? And you might see like the body thing is like the knees. Like, why are the knees so important? Well, if you can't bend to the knee, you can't really move the way that you want to, right? Like you need a certain amount of stability in order for you to move that bigger part of things forward. The 10th house, no matter where your MC is going to show you how you get with your public image or how people are perceiving you. It doesn't matter about day to day. It's about how the grander scheme of like people or business and stuff like that see you with, right? So I hope that gives you a little bit of concept. Now we have the 11th house. The 11th house is the reason why we have the internet. If you met me on Instagram, 11th house. If you met me from YouTube, 11th house. If you met me from anywhere other than real life, probably the 11th house. Why? Because this is the social networks. This is the hopes and dreams and aspirations of the future. What do people do online all the time? Talk about their hopes and aspirations. This thing is crazy. She got the get. There's some people are saying all types of stuff, but like it's all out to like the social media, to the larger part of everything else, right? So why, and it's also humanitarian concerns. So there's also social causes. So when people during the shutdown were getting, or even in the recent, unfortunately, we have a recent thing for somebody all the time, but in, I believe it's Sonia Massey, terrible. But with the fact when people are shifting and getting ready and getting to arms as they are, that's the 11th house thing. Because through the 11th house, we can get into a larger cause. So the 11th house also shows you your greater network as well. And so the greater cause, the greater network, the greater humanitarian nature, it's going to show up on the other side, unfortunately. But this is kind of how that works. 11th house is the bigger network at hand. RIP to them and F the country for being trash for that. Anyway, let's do the last one. My political and other thoughts aside, what I can say, when it gets to the 12th house, the 12th house is the most interesting. And the reason why the 12th house is the most interesting is because the 12th house is like everything outside of our control, but it's all the things that we kind of like aspire for. Sometimes in our life, we're like, what's the meaning? What's this? Well, maybe that's coming through the subconscious mind or the hidden aspects of yourself. Maybe in solitude is when those secrets will come up to reveal those struggles, to then send you on that next adventure. The 12th house is about undoing. And for someone who likes to do stuff, 12th house things suck because you're just there like, is this over yet? Like you're feeling this larger transformation. So if you have anything in the 12th house, you're literally pulling from the ethers all the time. So if you, let's say, so I'm about to say, if you have a 12th house sun in Gemini, you might not be the yappiest Gemini, but when you do say something profound, you shut everybody else up. They're like, oh my God, I thought we were just joking and having fun. You're like, oh, my bad. I just said something that was impactful. Oops, I had no idea. Like that's the kind of vibe that ends up coming through there. So mind you, I still have a bunch of stuff here for y'all, but I don't want to keep you over the time too far ahead. This does kind of double back on a lot of the other concepts that I said. This is kind of the review portion of everything, but I hope that y'all have at least thoroughly enjoyed this Astrology 101. This has been my first true go at explaining all the things I could. I see the love. Okay. All right. We did okay. We did all right. We did okay. All right. That's good. Nah, but genuinely, I appreciate each and every one of y'all being here. And it's been fun. I see a bunch of stuff. Thank y'all for real. Yeah, no, this has been a journey, and this is kind of the journey through the stars. And I wanted to give you an astrologer's perspective on how the astrology works. So it's not just the random BS. For everyone who needed to have this beforehand, I did try to send and pin this together, but I'm going to send it one more time at the bottom just so everyone has it, right? So this right here is the complete guide for everyone. So if you want to look at my Astrology 101 that I made during a time where I started and I was very out of it, that's that. But that is literally like basically a lot of what I said today, but again, a reference guide. So I wanted to just give y'all the reference. And here's my last part to all of this. Outside of like the love, outside of everything else like that, astrology is a sacred science that speaks directly to you differently than everyone else. If you have a different experience, a different opinion, a different feeling, a different vibe on anything to what I said, explore it that way. Because in the worst case scenario, you learn something different, right? You can try to meet people and be like, oh, you're this, so you must be that way. Or you can sense them, talk to them, learn from them, and then get into the astrology. So as much as I love astrology, I refuse to use astrology first to signify or to make sure I can talk to a person, right? That's one thing that I really like want to point out. Even in terms of like dating and stuff, don't call somebody out just because of a certain sign, because as we can see, there's so many more layers to it. Now, granted, if you just heading into a pattern and you're like, I keep dating this sign, they screw me over, that's different. It's a different conversation. But if it's just like I have to rule them all out forever, don't necessarily do that. But learn the lessons from it, because for all you know, you learned the lesson that you had to experience with that last sign. And so that conversation and communication could move better. And at the end of the day, if a sign triggers you, find where that is in your chart, because that's really what it's trying to say to all of us. And that's my Astrology 101. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let me end off this recording. Thank y'all for watching this later on. I'm going to end this off for the recording.